pews, and not in your pews, but in your homes maybe, which you can buy in stores or online. The Bible consists of many different texts written by many different people over many different centuries. I believe that all of these writers were divinely inspired, as were those who told the stories before they were written down. The Bible is a holy book. It is holy for what it does, put us in relationship with God, not for what it is, letters on pages. It did not fall from heaven. Every biblical text has a historical context, a Sitz im Leben, a place in the world where it was created and told and edited. And right from the beginning, different communities told different stories about the same people, and sometimes they told the same story a bit differently. Most of the earliest written biblical texts come to us in form of scrolls made of papyrus. In ancient times, the only way to copy these scrolls was by hand. Uncounted early Jewish and Christian scribes and later medieval monks spent hours and days and months and years copying and translating the holy writings so that more people around the world could read them. We owe them much gratitude. As you can imagine, and as you know from your own writing, sometimes you make a mistake. Sometimes while copying, you don't understand something or discover a mistake the author of the text made. Scribes sometimes changed the text they were copying, at times by accident, occasionally on purpose. These edits could be helpful, clarifying meaning, or they did just the opposite, erase or change meaning in a way that the original meaning was made less clear or even was replaced. A quote ascribed to 3rd century theologian Origen from Alexandria says, "The spiritual truth was often preserved, as one might say, in material falsehood." All this needs to be taken into account when we study the different versions of a biblical text. More ancient scrolls are discovered even today, and more of these are being digitalized right now, and thereby made easily accessible to scholars all over the world. That is how biblical scholar Elisabeth Schroeder-Polzner came to study Papyrus 66, arguably the oldest known version of the Gospel of John. She also studied other ancient scrolls and manuscripts from different points of origin which tell the story of Lazarus. Lazarus and his sisters Mary and Martha are friends of Jesus. When Lazarus falls severely ill, the sisters call for Jesus. Lazarus dies before Jesus arrives. The sisters are disappointed, but Jesus brings Lazarus back to life and they rejoice again. See, it could have been done in so many short words, right? Schroeder-Polzner found many inconsistencies in the versions of the story. She noticed verses where only one sister, only Mary, was mentioned. She saw verses where plural and singular forms like she and they and sister and sisters were mixed in nonsensical ways. She discovered verses in which the name Mary, Maria in Greek, was visibly changed to the name Martha, which could easily be done by changing the letter for I, iota, the Greek letter, in Maria, to the Greek letter for th, theta, it's only one letter, so I to th. The inconsistencies were profound enough to make an older version without Martha more likely. Why does that matter? Adding Martha to the siblings Lazarus and Mary in John 11 and 12 connects this story from the Gospel of John to the story of Martha and Mary in Luke 10. In that story, Jesus comes to visit two sisters. Mary seats herself at Jesus' feet to learn from his teachings, why Martha stresses out over all the housework she needs to do all by herself. Jesus asked Martha to relax and let Mary learn. This family and the family in Bethany are quite clearly two different families. There's no Lazarus in Luke and no town called Bethany. But there has been a tendency to harmonize these two stories, to view them as one over history. When we put the Lazarus story into context with the Martha and Mary story, we put it into the context of word and service, or word opposed to service. That is a completely different theological topic than what the Lazarus story is taken by itself. A prefiguration or prophecy of Jesus' death and resurrection, especially when we keep in mind the follow-up scene in John 12, where Mary, the sister of Lazarus, anoints Jesus' feet, and Jesus says, "This perfume was to be used in preparation for my burial, and this is how she has used it." Also, by adding a third person in John, the dynamic of the family changes. Most importantly, attention is pulled away from Mary and put onto Martha. This is especially evident in this part of the dialogue between Jesus and the woman. Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live, and everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into this world." This is the woman's Christological confession. In the gospel, as we know it, it is put into Martha's mouth. And then after John 12, we never hear from Martha again. This is strange when you consider how important Christological confessions are. Simon confesses and becomes Peter, the rock on which the church is built. Martha confesses and then disappears from history. This makes the Christological confession by Peter, a man, seem more important than the one by Martha, a woman. Now, if Martha was added to the scene through later editing, then Mary originally said these words. That would change our Christian self-understanding quite a bit if we'd add another important piece to this research puzzle. Schrader-Polzer suggests that Mary, the sister of Lazarus, and Mary Magdalene are one and the same person. Mary Magdalene is a major force in the Gospels and the early church. If she uttered the Christological confession in John 11 and prophesied Jesus' death in John 12, and was the first to encounter the resurrected Christ in John 20, her significance is elevated even more. This means Mary Magdalene was a major female voice at the beginning of the Christian movement who was marginalized in the course of Christian history. But there's one problem with this. Mary Magdalene is traditionally believed to mean Mary from the town of Magdala. If Mary Magdalene comes from Magdala and Lazarus' sister Mary comes from Bethany, how can they be the same person? The answer comes from another part of Elizabeth Schrader-Polzer's research. In the article by her and John Taylor, The Meaning of Magdalene, a review of literary evidence, they argue that Magdalene does not refer to a place, but is a title. Here are the two main arguments. Firstly, the existence of a town or village called Magdala in the time and area of Jesus' ministry is not documented. Later, in the 6th century, when Christian pilgrimage became more and more popular, a site known as Magdala became known, and they went there to remember Mary Magdalene, but not in Jesus' time. Secondly, when people are from somewhere, that is the word used, also in the New Testament, either from or a grammatical construction indicating from. When we are talking about a nickname or a title, we find the word called. Mary called Magdalene, and Simon called Peter. Peta in Greek, coming from the female Petra, rock. So this is Simon with the title Rock, the rock on which the church is built. The meaning of Magdala in Aramaic, one of the languages of the New Testament, is the tower, or the magnified one, the great. This is how Mary from Bethany can be Mary Magdalene, the woman with the honorific title, the Tower, maybe referring to her towering or great faith or importance in the early church. So Mary the Tower and Simon the Rock. If these are the two people who grasp who Jesus is early on and share this knowledge in form of their Christological confessions in the Bible, then both are foundational for the Christian church. Woohoo! Yeah, you can give her applause. I mean, aren't we all happy? Woo! Yay, Mary! And Simon Peter is certainly viewed that way. But at this, how we view Mary the Tower, do we view her as a founder of the church equal to Peter? We haven't been doing that for a long time. In the late antiquity and early Middle Ages, Mary Magdalene was known as the Apostola Apostolorum, the apostle to the apostles. After all, she was the one to bring the good news of Jesus' resurrection to the other apostles. Other than Peter, she also remained at Jesus' side after his arrest and throughout his execution. But later in the Middle Ages, her memory was transformed to that of a repentant sexual sinner. And I know you heard about that, right, from Pastor Jen. So Schrader-Proser does important research which puts Mary the Tower back to where she belongs. And that is on the same level as Peter, as confessor of Christ and leader of the early church. Now the question is, how are we going to incorporate this newly found but ancient knowledge into our daily lives and the life of the church? Amen. Thank you. I just want to mention one more thing because I see that we're going to be singing or listening to Somewhere Over the Rainbow.